She was investigated for child abuse, and if I were any of you, I would not let her hold that baby, my mother said in the hospital waiting room, and 19 people turned to look at me. I was 24 years old, sitting under a television tuned to daytime court shows, holding a paper cup of stale coffee. And in one sentence, my mother made me unemployable around children. By the end of that week, I had lost $680 in babysitting work. My supervisor had pulled me off the schedule at the pediatric therapy office where I worked, and my own cousin had texted me that I was not to come near her newborn son until she felt safe. Then a woman I had never met put my case on speakerphone and read one sentence from county records, and my mother stopped mid-word in front of 32 people. Before I go on, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely connect with this story. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where you're all listening from. My name is Megan Elizabeth Carter. I am 24 years old. Now let me take you back to St. Francis Regional Medical Center in Topeka, Kansas, on Friday, April 12th, 2024, at 6:18 in the evening. My cousin Hannah Ruiz was not even in labor yet. She was 36 weeks pregnant. She had some bleeding, and her husband Ben panicked and drove her to the hospital. In my family, one person having a hospital wristband turns into an audience. By 6 o'clock, there were already two aunts, my sister Kayla, my mother Denise Carter, my father Ronald Carter, Hannah's mother-in-law, Ben's brother, and three cousins lined up in that waiting room with fountain sodas and purses on every other chair. I was there because Hannah had texted me herself at 5:14. Can you come? My mom is making this a circus. That was Hannah. Even in a scare, she was specific. The waiting room smelled like lemon disinfectant, microwave popcorn, and that weird dry heat hospitals have in April when the air conditioning is still losing its argument with spring. Every 7 or 8 minutes, the automatic doors opened and let in a slice of cold air from the ambulance bay. You could hear wheel squeaks from somewhere down the hall. A baby cried once, sharp and tired, then stopped. My mother picked that room because there were witnesses. I know that now because she did not say it quietly to Hannah. She did not pull Ben aside. She stood up from a blue vinyl chair, set her purse on the seat, and set it in her voice for church tables and customer service counters. That careful voice that sounds responsible, even when it is lying. Before this baby is born, people deserve to know that Megan was investigated for child abuse last year. I have stayed quiet long enough. The room went still. Not dramatic still, the other kind. The kind where even people pretending not to listen stop moving. My Aunt Teresa looked down at her phone but did not type. My sister stared at the carpet pattern. Ben's mother, Lorraine, put a hand over her mouth. A man in green scrubs at the coffee kiosk turned his head. The security guard near the elevator actually took 2 steps closer. I said, "That is not true." My mother did not look at me. She looked at Hannah's mother-in-law. I would not let her near an infant, not after what happened. That sentence did the damage. Not because it was loud, because it was specific enough to sound reportable. Investigated. Child abuse. Infant. People know exactly what those words mean together. And if you have ever had that moment where you know everything is about to change, and there is no speech on earth that can catch it in midair, you already know what that felt like. It is not panic, not the screaming kind, the filing cabinet kind. Your brain starts opening drawers. I did not cry, I did not beg. Instead, I took out my phone and started a note. 6:18 p.m., St. Francis waiting room. 19 people present. Mom said I was investigated for child abuse. That is what I wrote first. A nurse named Carla came out and called for family of Hannah Ruiz. My mother switched faces in less than a second and went soft and concerned. That is us, she said, as if she had not just detonated my life in a pediatric adjacent waiting room. The nurse only allowed 2 people back. Ben went, obviously, and Hannah asked for me. I know this because Carla read off the note. Hannah says Megan can come. My mother's mouth tightened. Just once. Inside the triage room, Hannah was crying because she was scared, not because she was in labor. The fetal monitor made a fast little horse gallop sound. Antiseptic and hand soap, warm plastic from the blood pressure cuff. She grabbed my wrist and said, "Did she just say that out there?" "Yes," I said. "That never happened." "I know." Hannah shut her eyes. Ben heard her. Lorraine heard her. I heard enough through the curtain. I asked her one question. "Are you safe?" She nodded. Then she said, "Megan, I am sorry, but if she starts saying this to his family, they are going to believe her." She was right. That is the thing about certain lies. They are built to transfer. By 8:47 that night, after Hannah was told she was not in labor and should go home on modified rest, my cousin Savannah had already texted me. "Megan, is there something we should know?" There were no capital letters. That somehow made it worse. At 9:12, Ben's mother sent Hannah a screenshot from one of their family group chats where somebody had written, "Apparently her cousin has a history." At 9:26, my regular Friday client, a woman named Lila Pearson, whose twin boys I watched in Westboro 3 afternoons a week, texted, "Hey, quick question. Did someone make a report about you around kids? Call me." I stood in my kitchen in my apartment on Southwest Jewel Avenue, with leftover pad thai in the microwave and my shoes still on, and I understood the shape of the week that was coming. I called Lila at 9:28. I could hear the dishwasher running in the background and one of the twins singing the alphabet incorrectly. She said, "Megan, I hate even asking this, but my mother-in-law was at the hospital with Lorraine and she called me. She said your mom said there had been an investigation." There was not. Okay. Not okay, not maybe, not sort of, no. She was quiet for a second. "I believe you, but I need something I can show my husband if this gets messy." That sentence stayed with me. I need something I can show my husband. Not because she was cruel, because she was honest. People want receipts for innocence now. It is not enough to be right. You have to be printable. So that night, at 10:11 p.m., I made a folder on my laptop and named it April 12th. Then I made subfolders: witnesses, texts, work, county, family. I had been keeping that folder for 11 months by the time this was over. Now let me take you back to why my mother had that lie ready. In May of 2023, my sister Kayla left her 2 children with me for 5 nights in a row while she and her boyfriend Dylan were sorting things out. The kids were 3 and 6. Emery still needed help wiping after the bathroom. Jude had night terrors if he fell asleep too warm. I know that because I was there. I was always there. I was 23 then, working front desk at Little Oaks Pediatric Therapy on Gage Boulevard, and doing babysitting in the evenings. I made $16.25 an hour at the clinic, and another $400 to $600 a month watching kids. It was not glamorous, but it paid my rent and my car note on my 2014 Toyota Corolla. On the third day with Kayla's kids, I called my mother and said, "I need her to come get them tonight or tomorrow morning. I have work." My mother said, "You are young. You can manage for one more day." I said, "I already did 3. She lowered her voice the way she always did before pretending to be practical. "You got that insurance check in March. You are not exactly suffering." The insurance check was for $2,160 from a rear-end accident on Wanamaker Road. Most of it had already gone to a replacement bumper, physical therapy copays, and the week I had missed work. But my mother had been asking me for money since she heard the amount. First for her electric bill, then for my father's blood pressure medication, then because Kayla needed breathing room. I said no. Not rude. Just no. 2 days later, on Thursday, May 18, 2023, somebody called the Kansas Department for Children and Families Child Protection Hotline and reported that I had grabbed a child by the neck, left bruising, and screamed that she wished both children would disappear. The hotline worker documented the report at 11:53 a.m. The intake notes later showed that the caller claimed to be a close family member with direct knowledge. I did not know about any of that then. What I knew was that at 4:10 that afternoon, while I was bagging animal crackers in tiny snack cups at the clinic, my phone buzzed with a local number. A woman named April Morgan from DCF asked if I was available for a home visit regarding a concern involving two minors. My stomach went cold so fast I thought I was going to throw up. She came to my apartment at 6:31. She wore a navy cardigan and carried a state laptop bag and smelled faintly like peppermint gum. She looked around my living room, asked where the children were, and I told her the truth. Kayla had picked them up at 2:15. She asked if there had been any injuries. I said no. She asked if anyone had photographs. I said no, because there had been no bruises to photograph. She asked if there were any witnesses to how I cared for them. I gave her the names of my downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Ellen Price, who had seen us outside with sidewalk chalk every evening, and Lila Pearson, because I had watched her twins for almost a year without incident, and she knew me around children better than most of my family did. April Morgan looked tired in a professional way. She typed, nodded, and then asked one more question. Has there been any family conflict recently involving money or childcare? I said yes. She did not react. She just typed more. At 7:14 she left. At 7:26 she called me from her car and said, I cannot share every part of intake, but I can tell you this does not appear to rise to an open case based on what I have. If anybody asks, you can say there was a screened report and it is closed. That was all. No case. No finding. No investigation the way normal people mean investigation. A hotline call. A same-day check. Closed. I wrote down her name and the time because that is what I do when I am scared. I make lists. I write exact words. I save screenshots in duplicate. The next morning, I texted my mother. Did you or Kayla call DCF on me? She replied at 8:12 a.m. You always make everything about yourself. No one called anyone. If you are feeling guilty, that is your conscience. I saved that. At 8:14 she sent another one. And if someone did call, maybe ask yourself why. I saved that too. I should tell you something important about my family. They believed in plausible deniability the way some people believe in vitamins. Nothing was ever direct if indirect would leave less of a mark. My father Ronald did not scream. He shrugged. My sister did not accuse. She cried. My mother Denise did both things in a more polished package. She said cruel things with her hands folded. She had worked reception at a dental office for 19 years. She knew how to sound official. I asked Kayla the same question. Did you or Mom call DCF on me? Kayla texted back, please do not drag me into your drama. That phrase, your drama, has covered a lot of crimes in my family. Nothing else happened after May 18th. No one came back. No one from DCF ever contacted me again. I kept April Morgan's number in my phone. I saved my notes. Then I went back to work, because most damage does not arrive all at once. It waits for a room full of people. If you have ever been through the kind of family betrayal that does not explode right away, the kind that sits in a drawer until it becomes useful, you know how unsettling that quiet is. It is not peace, it is storage. And what came next cost me money first, then my name. On Monday, April 15th, 2024, at 9:03 in the morning, my supervisor at Little Oaks, Melissa Hahn, called me into her office. Melissa's office always smelled like dry erase markers and vanilla creamer. She kept a fish tank with one irritated-looking angelfish in the corner and a stack of speech therapy binders color-coded by day. I had worked there 18 months. I handled intake calls, insurance verification, waiting room cleanup, and sometimes sat with siblings in the play area while parents met with therapists. It was not childcare exactly, but it involved children all day, which made my mother's lie professionally radioactive. Melissa shut the door and said, "Megan, I need to ask you something uncomfortable." I said, "My mother called you." Her eyebrows lifted. "Yes." That almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because of course she had. Of course, standing up in a hospital waiting room was not enough. She needed institutional confirmation. She needed my life to echo her. Melissa folded her hands. She said there had been an investigation involving abuse. She said she was giving us a courtesy call because she knew you worked here. There was no abuse investigation. Can you document that for me? There it was again. Document that for me. Not "are you okay?" Not "what is happening?" Just the modern prayer. I said, "I can." Melissa nodded. "Until then, I am taking you off the schedule through Friday. Paid for today only. I am sorry. I lost 27 hours that week, $438.75 before taxes. I know the exact number because I still have the payroll screenshot from ADP." At 11:36 that same morning, Lila Pearson texted, "I need to pause childcare this week. I am sorry, I cannot risk it with the boys." That was $240 gone by lunch. At 1:12, another family I sat for occasionally in College Hill canceled a Saturday shift worth $120. By Tuesday evening, my loss was $678. By Friday, after gas and groceries I had already planned around that money, I had $43.19 in checking. I did not call my mother and scream. I did not post online. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, my phone charger, a yellow legal pad, and a pack of black pens from Office Depot, and I started building the thing she would not be able to speak over. First, I requested records from DCF. Kansas has a process for asking for your own information if a report involved you. The website language was dry and annoying, but plain enough. I printed the request form at the library because my printer had died in February. I scanned my ID. I mailed it certified on Tuesday, April 16th, at 12:44 p.m. from the post office on Southwest Harrison Street. $11.68. I still have the receipt. Second, I called April Morgan's old number. It went to voicemail. Her greeting had changed, but the extension transferred me to child protection intake. A woman named Rena Solis answered. She sounded tired and kind and in a hurry. I said, "I know you may not be able to tell me much. I am asking because my mother is telling people I was investigated for child abuse, and I need to know the exact status of a report from May 18th, 2023. Rena asked for my full name, date of birth, and the names of the children. Then she said, "I cannot release intake details over the phone, but I can tell you whether there was an open case. Hold on." I could hear keyboard tapping and somebody in the background saying, "Line 3 is holding." Then Rena came back and said, "I show an intake referral on that date, screened out, no assessment opened, no ongoing investigation." I wrote every word. Then I asked, "Can that be put in writing?" She said, "Through records, yes." I thanked her and hung up. Third, I asked for my work emails. Not all of them, just the ones about me coming off the schedule. Melissa sent them because she is careful. At 2:27 on Tuesday, she emailed me. As discussed, due to a report from a family member alleging a prior child abuse investigation, we are placing you off schedule pending documentation clarifying your status. I printed that too. Fourth, I got witness statements. Not formal sworn things, just texts and emails. Hannah texted me at 7:52 p.m. Tuesday, I heard Aunt Denise say in the waiting room that you were investigated for child abuse and no one should let you near my baby. Ben texted me from his work break at the Frito-Lay plant. I heard it too. My mom heard it too. She repeated it to Lila's mother-in-law. I am sorry. Lorraine, to her credit, sent me a one-line text that said, "I should not have repeated what was said. I did. It was wrong." I saved that, under witnesses. Fifth, I called my Aunt Teresa, because in every family there is at least one person who sees the whole thing and survives by standing still. She answered on the second ring. I could hear a turn signal clicking. I said, "You were there. Did you hear Mom say I was investigated for child abuse?" Long pause. Then Teresa said, "Megan, your mother is under a lot of strain." I almost ended the call. Instead, I said, "That is not what I asked." Another pause. "Yes," I heard her. "Did you say anything?" "No." "Why?" She exhaled through her nose. "Because with your mother, if you correct her in public, she will spend 6 months making you pay for it." There it was, the whole family system in one sentence. I said, "I am already paying for it." She had no answer to that. That night, at 10:18, Aunt Teresa emailed me from her Yahoo address because she did not want to text anything that could be screenshotted out of context. People like her always say that right before sending the thing that matters most. Her email said, "I was present in the St. Francis waiting room on April 12, 2024, and I heard Denise Carter state that Megan had been investigated for child abuse and should not be around the baby." It was signed Teresa Mann, no flourish, just fact. I printed it and put it in a folder with tabs. That is how long it took them to erase me, 4 days. That is how long it took me to start getting myself back on paper. Now let me take you back to the gender reveal, because yes, she did it again. Hannah's original gender reveal had been planned for Saturday, April 13th, at Ben's parents' house in Tecumseh. Blue and pink cupcakes, one of those smoke cannons, a rented balloon arch from a woman named Candace who ran a side business out of Silver Lake. The hospital scare pushed it back 1 week, to Saturday, April 20th, at 3 in the afternoon. I was not invited. Not officially. Hannah texted me on Wednesday night at 9:51 and said, "I want you here, but Ben's mom is nervous because of what your mom said. I am trying to fix it." I texted back, "Do not fight with people in your third trimester for me." She replied, "Too late." On Thursday, Ben called me from the parking lot at work. You could hear forklifts backing up in the background. He said, "I need to be straight with you. My mom asked that you stay away until there is proof. I told Hannah I would handle your aunt if she starts. I am sorry." I said, "You do not owe me an apology for wanting records before you hand me your newborn. I get it." He was quiet, then said, "I hate that you are being reasonable about this." That made two of us. By then, the records request was still pending, but I had enough to know where this was going. I called Rena Solis again Friday morning at 8:14. I said, "I am sorry to bother you, but my family is still repeating this. Is there any supervisor who can confirm, in plain language, that there was never an open investigation?" She transferred me to Meredith Klein, intake supervisor for Shawnee County Child Protection. Meredith sounded like someone who had answered too many emotional calls to waste a word. Clean voice. No softness, but no cruelty either. I explained the situation in one breath. She said, "Ms. Carter, I cannot discuss third-party details in a social setting. What I can tell you, and what I can repeat if needed with your verbal permission on speakerphone, is whether our office opened an assessment under your name. If we did not, I can say that." I wrote her name in all caps. Then I asked, "Can you say the difference between a hotline call and an investigation?" She said yes. I closed my eyes. "Thank you. If you have ever had the exact right person answer the phone on the exact right day, you know the feeling. Not relief. Relief comes later. This was traction. The floor was still tilted, but my shoes had found something to grip. And what happened on Saturday would have gone very differently if Meredith Klein had been one lunch break later. I was at home at 2:43 on Saturday, wearing old black leggings and a gray Washburn University sweatshirt, reorganizing my folder for the fourth time, when Hannah called me crying. I answered with, "What happened?" She whispered, She is telling people again. I stood up so fast my chair tipped. Who? My mother is in the kitchen with Ben's aunt and his cousin Jenna. She said, there was a state investigation, and I am only saying this because a baby is involved. Lorraine is acting weird. Ben just asked me if there is anything he does not know. I asked one question. Do you want me there? Yes. So I drove from my apartment to Tecumseh with my folder in the passenger seat and Meredith Klein's extension written on a sticky note on the dashboard. It took 22 minutes. I remember because every red light on Southeast 29th felt personal. Ben's parents' house sat on a long gravel drive with a split-rail fence and a decorative wagon wheel by the mailbox. There were 28 people there when I arrived. Somebody had put country music on a speaker too low to enjoy and too loud to ignore. You could smell charcoal, buttercream frosting, and the sharp green smell of freshly cut grass. When I got out of my Corolla, conversation shifted in that weird social weather way where you do not know if anyone has actually stopped talking or if your ears just zoom in. Hannah was sitting on a patio chair with one hand under her belly and her face blotchy from crying. Ben stood behind her with his jaw set. My mother was near the sliding glass door in a navy blouse and white capris, holding a plastic cup of lemonade like this was an afternoon she had earned. She saw my folder first. That is unnecessary, she said. I walked past her and crouched by Hannah. Do you want me to leave? Hannah said, no. Ben said, no. So I stayed. My mother took one step closer. Megan, I am trying to protect this child. I said, from what? She lowered her voice, which is how she got meanest. From your instability. I stood up. Say exactly what you have been saying. Not here. In the hospital was here. She looked around and realized too late that half the yard had gone quiet. Ben's cousin had actually put down the cupcake tray. I counted without meaning to. 28 people outside. 4 more visible through the kitchen window. 32. Then my mother did what people like her do when they think the room still belongs to them. She made her lie sound like reluctant civic duty. There was a state investigation involving Megan and abuse toward children, she said. I would think any responsible family would want to know that before a newborn is handed around. Silence. Not one person looked at me first. They looked at Ben and Hannah. Because that is what these accusations do. They do not just stain you. They transfer fear to whoever loves you. I said, Ben, can I use your phone speaker? He handed it over immediately. I called Meredith Klein's extension at 3:12 p.m. She answered on the second ring. Intake Supervisor Klein. My name is Megan Carter. We spoke yesterday. I am with family members who have been told that I was under child abuse investigation. You said if I gave permission, you could clarify whether your office ever opened an assessment under my name. I can do that. I switched to speaker. The wind made the line crackle once. Meredith said, in the same tone she probably used to confirm fax numbers. For the individual identified as Megan Elizabeth Carter, date of birth June 21st, 1999, Shawnee County records show one intake referral dated May 18th, 2023. That referral was screened out. No assessment was opened. There was no child abuse investigation under her name. No one moved. Then she added, because I had asked the day before, and because some professionals understand plain language matters. A hotline call is not the same thing as an open investigation. In this case, no investigation existed under Ms. Carter's name. You could hear a lawn sprinkler somewhere in the distance. Tick, tick, tick. Ben's mother Lorraine said, wait. Meredith, who had no idea she was slicing through an entire family mythology, continued. If anyone is stating that Ms. Carter was investigated by our office, that is inaccurate based on our records. And then, because the world occasionally gives you more than you dared ask for, a second voice came faintly through the phone. A woman in the background said, Meredith, is that the false family referral one? Meredith covered the receiver for a second, then came back and said, I will keep this general, but yes, this referral was noted at intake as a family conflict concern. My mother opened her mouth, closed it. Ben took the phone from me and said, Ma'am, thank you. His voice sounded strange, like he was talking around something heavy. He hung up. The room stayed quiet for 4 full seconds. I counted them. Then Lorraine turned to my mother and said, You told me there had been an investigation. My mother said, There was a report. Lorraine said, That is not what you said. My father, who had stood by the grill pretending this was weather, muttered, Denise? Just her name. Nothing useful. Typical. My mother looked at me and said the only thing she could find. You knew there had been a report. I said, Yes, about a lie. That should have been enough. But one lie rarely travels alone. Ben looked at his phone, then at Hannah. My mom canceled Megan because of that. Lila canceled because of that. Her job paused her because of that. There it was. The cost, finally spoken in front of witnesses. My Aunt Teresa, who had spent most of her adult life surviving by omission, said from near the patio table, Denise called the therapy office too. My head turned so fast my neck hurt. What? Teresa looked sick. I heard her, Monday morning. She was in the Target parking lot on Wanamaker. She said she was making a courtesy call because children were involved. That was the first time Teresa chose a side in public. My mother said, I did what any grandmother would do. Hannah's face changed at that. Not louder, colder. You are not this baby's grandmother, she said. That landed. The reveal itself was almost anticlimactic after the phone call. No one gasped, no one clapped. This was not that kind of family. What happened instead was better. People recalculated me out loud. Ben's Aunt Jenna said, Then why were we told not to let her near the gifts? Lorraine asked if she needed to call Lila's mother-in-law and correct what she had passed on. Ben's brother asked, So somebody made a false report over money? And my mother stood there holding a sweating plastic cup that had started to leave a wet ring on the patio table. If you have ever watched a liar realize the room is no longer helping, you know that look. Not shame, logistics. She was already looking for the smaller version of the story she could survive with. But she had miscalculated one thing. She thought the worst consequence would be me feeling hurt. She forgot jobs leave email trails. On Monday, April 22nd, at 8 o'clock in the morning, I sent 1 email and 3 attachments. The email went to Melissa Hahn at Little Oaks Pediatric Therapy, copied to the clinic owner, Darlene Fitch. Subject line, clarification and documentation. Attached were the work email pausing me, Aunt Teresa's statement, and a typed summary of my call with Meredith Klein, including the supervisor's title, date, time, and direct number. I also wrote, My mother, Denise Carter, contacted the clinic and repeated a false claim that I had been investigated for child abuse. Shawnee County Intake confirmed there was no open assessment or investigation under my name. Please confirm receipt and let me know whether the clinic needs anything else to return me to schedule. Melissa replied at 9:07. Received. Thank you. We are reviewing now. At 10:24, Darlene Fitch herself called me. I had only met her 3 times because she owned 2 locations and mostly stayed at the one in Lawrence. She said, Megan, I owe you a direct answer. We removed you from the schedule based on what we were told by your mother, and because one parent called after hearing the same rumor. That was wrong. We should have asked you for documentation before making any staffing change. I listened. Then she said, You are reinstated effective immediately. Also, your mother is no longer permitted on clinic property. We are putting it in writing at the front desk. I sat down on my bed because my knees gave out a little. The laundry basket was still full of clean clothes I had not folded because my life had been on fire. I said, Thank you. Darlene continued, You will also be paid for the 27 hours you lost last week. There are moments where your body tells the truth before your face does. My eyes filled then, not because I was suddenly okay, because rent was due in 9 days. The back pay hit my account Wednesday morning, $438.75. I have the bank screenshot from 6:19 a.m. Lila Pearson was next. Lorraine had corrected her mother-in-law on Saturday night, and by Sunday afternoon Lila called me while she was buckling one of the twins into a car seat. I could hear the beeping. She said, "I am sorry. I should have paused one day, not assumed a week. I panicked." I said, "You have 2 kids, I understand." She said, "No, understanding me is not the same as this being acceptable. I told my husband everything and I want to pay you for the cancelled week." I told her no. She sent me the money anyway through Venmo, $240 at 7:15 p.m. with the note, "For my part in the mess." I kept the screenshot of that too. Then came the part my mother did not expect. Ben and Hannah changed the hospital visitor list for the birth. Hannah went into real labor on Thursday, May 2nd at 2:14 in the morning. Ben texted me at 6:51. "He is here, 7 pounds, 1 ounce, everyone healthy." At 8:23, Hannah sent a photo of the baby's folded ear and tiny clenched fist and wrote, "You can come after lunch." My mother could not. Because on April 23rd, Hannah and Ben had gone to St. Francis together and updated their approved visitor list with a charge nurse named Monique Sanders. They removed Denise Carter and Ronald Carter. Monique wrote the change in the chart and had security note it because there had already been family conflict in waiting area, documented during the April 12th visit. I know that exact wording because Hannah showed me the screenshot from her patient portal message thread. My mother arrived at the maternity floor on May 2nd at 1:10 p.m. anyway, carrying a blue gift bag with tissue paper and a knit blanket she had probably bought at TJ Maxx on clearance. Security turned her away at the elevator. A guard named Evan, according to Hannah, told her, "Ma'am, your name is not on the approved list." My mother told people later that it was a misunderstanding. It was not. It was a direct consequence. 2 days after that, on Saturday, May 4th, my father came to my apartment for the first time in almost a year. He did not come in. He stood in the hallway with his hands in his pockets and looked at the fire extinguisher box on the wall like it had called the meeting. He said, "Your mother did not mean for this to go so far." I said, "She stood up in a hospital and said I hurt children." He nodded once, tiny. "She says she was worried." I said, "She was angry about money, and she found a way to make it permanent." He looked tired, older than 61. "Can this be fixed?" I said, "For me? Some of it? For her? That depends on what she thinks fixing means." Then he said the only useful thing he has maybe ever said to me. "She called the hotline." I did not speak. He kept looking at the fire extinguisher cabinet. Kayla told me that night. Denise was in the kitchen on speaker. She said if they asked, it came from family. She told Kayla it would just create a record and teach you not to talk to her like that. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. "When were you going to tell me?" I asked. He said, "I am telling you now." That is the problem with men like my father. They bring truth after the sale is final and want credit for delivery. Still, I asked, "Will you say that in writing?" He shut his eyes, opened them. "No? Then do not come here asking me to make her comfortable." He nodded and left. I did not need his statement by then. On Monday, May 6th, my records request finally arrived in the mail. The envelope was white, thin, and looked insultingly ordinary for something I had paid $11.68 and 19 days of my life to receive. Postmarked Topeka. Return address, Kansas Department for Children and Families. Inside was a cover letter, a record summary, and a redacted intake sheet. The crucial line sat on page 2. Reason for screenout. Information provided by reporter could not be corroborated. Allegations appear connected to family conflict over money and childcare. No assessment assigned. I read that sentence 6 times. Then I noticed another line. Reporter identified relationship as maternal family member. Maternal family member. Not conclusive by itself. But together with what my father had blurted in the hallway, and what Aunt Teresa had already admitted hearing, it closed the circle. I put the pages in sheet protectors. If you have ever waited for paperwork that you already know exists, paperwork that contains the sentence your entire nervous system has been bracing for, then you know how surreal that moment is. Paper is so light for what it can carry. Mine weighed less than an ounce. It got my job back, my income back, and my mother's access to the one thing she wanted most. There was one room left. My grandmother's 75th birthday dinner was on Sunday, May 19th, at La Hacienda on Southwest Boulevard. 26 family members in the back room, chipped salsa bowls, 2 bright overhead lights, and the smell of grilled onions embedded into the walls. I almost did not go. Then I remembered who had made me afraid of family rooms in the first place. So I went. I wore dark jeans, small gold hoops, and a cream cardigan because I wanted to look like someone with no emergency. I arrived at 5:53. My mother was already there, seated halfway down the long table, posture perfect, talking to my cousin Maribel as if she had not lost access to a newborn 17 days earlier because of her own mouth. She looked at me once, then at my empty hands, probably expecting another folder. I did have one. It was in my tote. Dinner started normally. Chips, drink orders. My grandmother asking 3 different people to move because the vent was blowing on her shoulder. Then, between the fajitas arriving and the birthday flan, my mother tried to rebuild herself. She did not apologize. People like her never start there. She said to no one and everyone, "Families go through misunderstandings, but I think some people have enjoyed making me into a villain." I took a sip of water and set the glass down. Ben, who had come because Hannah was home with the baby, said, "It was not a misunderstanding." My mother smiled without warmth. "Benjamin, you were not there for everything." And that is when the third-party reveal landed for real. Not from me, not from Ben. From the restaurant's side-room speakerphone, because Aunt Teresa had finally decided she was done spending 6 months paying for other people's lies. Earlier that afternoon, without telling me, she had called Meredith Klein's office again and asked if she would be willing to confirm one narrow thing for a family member who keeps changing the story. Meredith had said she could not join a family argument. Sensible. So Teresa did the next best thing. She asked if records could be verbally confirmed to the subject in front of witnesses if the subject was present and consented. Meredith said yes. At 6:41, right after my mother said misunderstandings, Teresa reached into her purse, pulled out her phone and said, "Megan, are you willing to verify your identity for Ms. Klein right now?" The whole table looked up. I said, "Yes." My mother's face changed by half an inch. Teresa pressed speaker. Meredith answered, a little clipped this time. "Klein speaking," Teresa said. "Ms. Klein, Megan Carter is present with family members. She can verify identity if needed. They are still saying she was investigated." I gave my name and date of birth. Meredith said, "Thank you. As previously confirmed, Shawnee County records show no child abuse investigation was opened under Megan Elizabeth Carter's name. One intake referral was screened out on May 18, 2023. The record notes family conflict over money and childcare. There was no open assessment." You could hear silverware stop. Then Meredith said one more sentence, and this was the one that finished it. "If someone told employers or relatives that Ms. Carter had been investigated, that statement was false. No one in that room worked for DCF. No one could reinterpret her. She was just doing her job. That is what made it so devastating. Truth sounds different when it comes from someone with no investment in your pain." My mother turned to Aunt Teresa and said, "You called a state office during Mother's birthday dinner?" Teresa replied, "No, Denise. You did this in a hospital. Silence. My mother started to say my name, Meg, and stopped. That was all. One broken syllable. After dinner, my grandmother asked me in the parking lot, under a flickering light with moths batting themselves stupid against the glass, "Did she really call your job?" I said, "Yes." Grandma nodded once. "Then she does not come to my house this summer." And she meant it. My grandmother hosted Sunday dinners from Memorial Day to Labor Day in her split level off Southwest 21st. My mother loved those dinners because they gave her audience and status. That summer she was not invited to one of them. 14 Sundays in a row. Concrete, nameable, public in the exact social ecosystem she valued most. There was another price too. On June 3rd, Hannah and Ben closed the online baby registry fund that my mother had been managing to help with thank you purchases and transferred the remaining $892.14 into an account only Hannah could access. Hannah texted me the screenshot with, "She does not get to handle things for us anymore." Again, concrete. Money moves are a language families understand. As for the clinic, Darlene Fitch sent me a formal letter for my file on June 7th, stating that the allegation repeated by my mother had been unverified and false, and that my employment standing was unaffected. Plain language, signed, dated. I keep that letter in a fireproof box under my bed. Not because I think I will need it tomorrow, because women like me learn to keep our own weather records. It has been 3 years now. I am 27. I do not work at Little Oaks anymore. I went back to school in August of 2025 and finished my occupational therapy assistant program in December of 2026. I work in an outpatient pediatric rehab clinic in Overland Park now. Full-time. Benefits. My own caseload support. My badge says Megan E. Carter, COTA, and nobody there knows my mother. People always want the ending to be either dramatic forgiveness or total destruction. Real endings are smaller and cleaner than that. My mother did not lose her job because I never called the dental office where she worked. I did not need strangers to manage what our family had finally seen. But she did lose what mattered to her most. She lost unsupervised access to Hannah's son. She lost her standing at my grandmother's Sunday dinners that entire summer. She was barred from my workplace and from Hannah's maternity floor. She was removed from handling baby fund money. And when my cousin Savannah had her daughter the next year, she put in writing, before the birth, that Denise Carter was not to receive hospital updates from staff. Consequences travel too. There was one more price. In September of 2024, my Aunt Teresa left the church committee she had chaired with my mother for 9 years because, in her words, "I will not keep smoothing over lies to preserve your tone." My mother lost that role 3 months later after Teresa and another woman, Denise Fuller, refused to keep covering logistics she usually took credit for. She hated that, not because of faith, because of visibility. I wish I could tell you this made me lighter right away. It did not. For a long time, every time a parent at work looked at me too carefully, my body remembered that waiting room. If a child bruised easily, I documented everything twice. If a grandmother asked too many questions, I felt my shoulders tighten. There are injuries that do not leave marks, and then there are injuries that teach your nervous system a new job. My sister Kayla and I barely speak. She never admitted what she knew on the night of the hotline call. She sent one text in June of 2024 that said, "I do not want to be in the middle." I never responded because the middle was where she had been standing while I got hit from both sides. My father sends me birthday texts that begin with, "Hope you're well." I answer thanks and nothing else. He chose silence until it was expensive for me and emotionally inconvenient for him. I do not confuse late honesty with character. As for my mother, the last thing she said to me in person was on December 24th, 2025, in my grandmother's driveway, after she tried to hand me a gift bag with bath salts and a card. She said, very calmly, I think you have punished me enough. And I said, you think this is punishment because you still think the worst part was what happened to you. Then I got in my car and left. That is the thing I want to say carefully, because some of you listening have been through your own version of this. Winning does not restore the original shape of the relationship. Documentation does not create a mother where there was only strategy. Proof can get you your job back. It can get your name cleared. It can get the right sentence spoken in the right room by the right person. What it cannot do is make your body forget the moment 19 people looked at you like maybe they should keep babies away from your hands. I still have the folder. It is thicker now, but closed. The first page is the note I typed at 6:18 p.m. in that hospital waiting room. Mom said I was investigated for child abuse. 19 people present. The last page is the clinic letter from June 7th confirming my employment standing was unaffected. Everything important happened in between. The waiting room, the lost wages, the certified mail receipt, Aunt Teresa's Yahoo email, Meredith Klein's flat voice on speakerphone, while 32 people stood in a backyard smelling smoke and frosting. My mother's half said Meg at La Hacienda when the state office said the record notes family conflict over money and childcare. That sentence bought me back my own face. I do not forgive her. Not because I am bitter, because I am accurate. If you have ever had to become your own records department just to survive your family, I hope this story sits beside you a little. Quietly. Like proof. And if you are in the part where everyone is still looking at you like the lie might be true, start writing things down. Times, dates, names, screenshots, exact words. Do it before you feel brave. Do it while your hands shake, especially then. That is how I won. Not loudly, not quickly, not cleanly, just clearly.